For more on the problems women face around the world and the gains they've made, we're joined now by women's rights advocate Davia Crutchfield. So Davia, we know that because of the pandemic, millions of women around the world were forced or were pressured to leave the workforce this past year. How would you describe the past year for women around the world?
Devastating. COVID-19 brought along with it a series of other complications, including employment, childcare, home care, healthcare access. And we see an increasing number of women not voluntarily and voluntarily leaving workforce specifications simply to take care of home. And oftentimes, women are those people in positions who are forced to compromise between work and home when they do have the advantage to actually choose which area which they'll have to accommodate during this awful pandemic.
Right. We have seen some gains. We've seen more female leaders around the world, female CEOs, managers. And this year's theme is Choose the Challenge. And it calls for women to challenge the status quo and stand up for an equitable world. So what would you say are the top 2 or 3 challenges women are facing today?
Agency, advocacy, empowerment. I think with that couples access and human rights, health rights. I think women oftentimes have to advocate for themselves and one another against systems, structures, and powers. Yes, we have seen increases of women and women of color in very prominent roles, but they're still very far and in between. And so we have to constantly join together and create coalitions within our own groups, our own demographics, so that we do have a resounding, echoing voice in all of these systems against all of these systems of oppression.
When you mentioned women of color, let's focus in on this group, women of color around the world. Let's talk to some of the positives and negatives that you've seen in the past year.
I have seen women of color start businesses, being placed into areas of remote occupation. There have been increases there in some areas of recreating what it is to be a business owner and an entrepreneur. The reality is we're also still holding several different duties simultaneously, many of us still shouldering the responsibilities within our ever-growing familial dynamics. And so though there are those opportunities to create another business from home, there's still those challenges with actually entering into new workforce spaces, because the reality is there may be oftentimes that the world we once knew will no longer be acceptable or no longer be available even.
Right. So what advice do you have for all of us, not just men, but for all of us to push for more gender equality and equity?
I think of the words of Angela Bassett. I recently saw a video where she championed, "This is me being resolute and standing firmly in my truth." And as long as we continue to, as this year's theme, choose to challenge, keeping that resounding voice, challenge every single system that tries to benefit from our silence.
And what are you hopeful for? Sorry to interrupt. What are you hopeful for in the year ahead?
Opportunity. Even in the midst of chaos and tragedy, I still hold firmly to optimism, and I still hold firmly to good. And I do hope for more spaces of accountability for people in positions of power to really take note and take heed that even the idea of gender equality is steeped and is based on equitable rights, equitable access, equitable opportunities. And so my hope moving forward is that more people will have that area of conscience and move forward accordingly.
All right, Davia Crutchfield, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.